Hello and welcome to another episode of Anthony's Asylum. I'm your host, Anthony. And today I was going to go into more Star Wars stuff. I was going to talk about the nature of the Force, so that's going to be the first segment. Then I thought I'd go into a little bit of Dark Souls 3. So for all you Souls fans out there and From Software fans, hopefully this will be a little bit exciting. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about like I said, it's just going to be whatever comes to my mind, and I really kind of wanted to go into the sort of economic crisis, I guess, that China is going through right now. Just like broad strokes. I'm not really going to go into any detailed stuff, because I'm not an economist, but based on what I've read and I've been kind of following that story just a little bit, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it and see what some of your thoughts are. So let's get started with Star Wars. So this will be Star Wars kind of part 2, a continuation of what I was talking about last week. Just to kind of recap, I was talking a little bit about it kind of started with my Halloween costume this year. So I'm going to be dressing as Luke Skywalker from The Force Awakens. And as I kind of pointed out, we really don't know what he looks like yet. So I'm kind of going based off of kind of the Obi-Wan Kenobi look. I'm assuming that's what he's going to be dressed as. Kind of more of a traditional Jedi look. Apparently, I don't know, I was reading some stuff. There was some leaked footage, though. Or not footage, but a leaked image of Luke Skywalker, and something about how he was wearing something that looked similar to the Jedi Temple Guard in the Clone Wars TV series. And now I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. I've actually been going through the Clone Wars TV series on Netflix, so I didn't watch it while it was on Cartoon Network. But I'm going through it now with my oldest son. We're kind of going through it together, just kind of leisurely. Like, we're not marathoning it or anything. Although that would be cool if we did that, but we're just kind of every couple of days we'll watch a couple episodes just to kind of catch up on it and whatever. But, it's been really good so far. I think Clone Wars, say what you will about the prequels or whatever. The Clone Wars TV series, even the movie was pretty lackluster. I remember seeing the movie back in 2008 with my oldest son, who at the time I think was 2 or 3. Yeah, I think he was 2. And he was too young to see that film, but I really wanted to see it, and I was babysitting him, so I was like, I'm taking him to see it. But I could barely watch it because he was just running around and wasn't very interested in it. And honestly, I wasn't that interested in it. But when the series came out, I guess it got better and better is what I kept hearing. And it was getting critical acclaim and, getting Emmy Awards and things like that. So, it was, pretty impressive. And so now that I'm actually getting into the show on Netflix, it is. The first season is kind of it's kind of hard to get through, at least that first half of the first season. But then it starts getting really good, and then season 2 and 3, it's dark. It's amazing how dark it gets, and how really powerful and really, just really impressive. I'm pretty impressed with it. So far, and I hope it ends on a good note. Or a bad note, I don't care, whatever. It's supposed to lead into Revenge of the Sith, obviously, so it's not like it, we all know what happens, but, anyway, so it's a good show. But anyway, going back to what I wanted to talk about, so part 2, I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of the Force. So part 1, we talked a little bit about the Jedi and kind of the progression of, or the evolution of what the Jedi wear, and the significance of that. Luke Skywalker wearing the black tunic in Return of the Jedi is a little odd, knowing now that all Jedi, or most Jedi for that matter, wear these sort of traditional Jedi robes, which is this sort of white or tannish tunic. with, boots and then sort of a brown robe covering that. So, and all Jedi generally wear this. And this is what we've discovered with the prequel trilogy. And this has become the sort of look for the Jedi. I mean, this is what we think of now when we think, oh, Jedi, and this is, a look consistent with what Obi-Wan Kenobi was wearing in the original trilogy and what Yoda was wearing. So it's not like it's new, but now it has been established that this is the way Jedi look. So, and one of my questions was, well, is Luke going to be wearing the black tunic, or is he going to be wearing the more traditional Jedi robes that we now know and love? And I think he's going to be wearing the more traditional Jedi robes. And I guess from a leaked image, there's been some confirmation that he is going to be wearing that. But I guess he's wearing something that the Jedi Temple Guard wear. And I'm trying to think of, I don't think I've gotten to that part of the series yet. I don't know if there's a specific episode where they focus on the Jedi Temple Guard or something. But I'm trying to think of what they look like. And I don't know. I haven't really checked it out. So, but anyway, so we talked a little bit about that, but then I wanted to get into the nature of the Force, and I mentioned that George Lucas essentially created two perspectives on the Force, right? And in the original trilogy, there was one perspective. There was Obi-Wan Kenobi's and Yoda's perspective, which in all reality is a very abstract perspective, one that is very, I'm trying to think of, one that is very ethereal, I guess, and one that is very sort of spiritual and good. I mean, it worked. Obviously, I mean, people love the Force, and it is because I think it just works so well in the context of the story. And I think the way that specifically Obi-Wan talks about it in A New Hope, in the sense that it is this sort of all-powerful, all-knowing kind of Force. Well, there's no other word for it. I mean, the Force, you know what I mean? That, can help you, guides you, it sort of works through you, and helps you to, you can foresee things, you can, it just enhances your senses, there's these different things, and so he, but like I said, very abstract, but I think very tangible too. I think something that we could all grasp onto, something that, Luke could really grasp onto. And I always get that feeling when you watch A New Hope that Luke really didn't know, he was really grasping onto it in terms of I think he just wanted the sense of adventure and the, and that, he had heard the tales of the Clone Wars and all this stuff. And, I think he had a very romantic, attitude and feeling towards the Jedi and the Force and the war now, the civil war between the, Empire and the rebels. And, and so it, was, I don't know, it was just very, romantic and sort of, I think he was just jumping on the shark, not knowing really what the outcome was going to be, what he was going to really be sacrificing, as we see in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So I think for him in A New Hope, I think it was just hey, it's kind of a fun thing, and I have this cool ability, and I don't know what the hell it is, but hey, I can do it, and it looks cool, and it's just weird. I always laugh at that scene in A New Hope when Obi-Wan first gives Luke that lightsaber. Seriously, it'd be giving a little kid a loaded weapon, you know what I mean? It's just he just gives it to him and he just like turns it on and starts swinging. It's like, what the heck, dude? Like, yeah, sure. In real life, that hut of yours would have been destroyed. So I think it's always funny to me that he would just give him that, and then like Luke like automatically knows, like, oh yeah, cool, it's a lightsaber. I know what to do with this. And you could argue too that that could be an in-universe story point as well. Because he is strong with the Force, he would know. Maybe he has some intuition into what it is and what you need to do with it and how to wield it and how not to chop Obi-Wan's and C-3PO's heads off in the process. But anyway, I always laugh at that. But so, like I said, we have this in the original trilogy, abstract view. At the same time, abstract, but at another time, very concrete. Obviously, because you have these, and it's more specifically spelled out, I think, in Empire Strikes Back, when they start talking a little bit more about the dark side of the Force. So then we start going to a little bit about, oh, well, now we have the light side and we have the dark side. And, with Yoda and all that, and explaining that, the dark side, again, maybe abstract, but also I think a little bit more concrete when he talks about the dark side, just talking about fear, and hatred and anger and those kinds of things leading to the dark side. And what basically feeds the dark side are those feelings, but they don't really go into too much about what feeds the light side in that sense. Like you would think, okay, serenity, I guess, peace, peace of mind, humility, compassion, and these are things that are really fleshed out in the prequel trilogy, in fact, specifically in Attack of the Clones, when Anakin talks about it. I think when Anakin talks about the Force and the good side of the Force, the light side, I think are the best examples of the light side of the Force that we get. And like I said, it's when he talks about it in Attack of the Clones to Padme, and I think it's when he talks about it in Revenge of the Sith to Palpatine, specifically that awesome scene at the opera when the evil Palpatine, the evil Lord Sidious, discusses the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, which is, oh god, a fantastic story. And probably one of the only examples of a story like that in the Star Wars movies, which is equally fascinating, and I think it makes it even more impressive. But anyway, I'm jumping around a little bit too far because I wanted to get into the prequels a little bit later. But so again, we have this perspective, but now we're sort of introducing the dark side, and we're kind of getting more into that. And then there's not really much after that. We get into Return of the Jedi. It's more about, well, it's more about Luke trying to save his father, and then Yoda and Obi-Wan saying, well, you need to destroy your father, and that kind of thing. So, but we think we have a firm establishment of what the Force is, right? So, 19 years later, something like that, we get The Phantom Menace, and we get a lot of grumblings from fans because all of a sudden George Lucas introduces this new perspective on the Force, and that perspective is midichlorians, the dreaded word, right? Midichlorians, and also this nature of Qui-Gon Jinn, and this sort of the idea that there is a living Force. I don't know, really fascinating. I remember watching the movie the first time. I was 12, I think, 12 or 13. And you guys all know this. I love the prequels. I love them as much as the original movies, and I think the prequels enhance the original movies and vice versa. I I think they complement each other. I think they work well. And you can say what you will about the bad acting, the bad writing, whatever. Like I said, I've said this before too. You look at the original trilogy, and it's not, it's not, Pulitzer Prize winning stuff either. You know what I mean? It's not Oscar winning caliber acting. It never was, and it never was intended to be. So I think putting that aside, it doesn't really matter. I don't care. But I love the prequels, so deal with it. Anyway, so yeah, we get this nature of the living force, and you can tell obviously there's this sort of what do you want to call it? I guess like a wall almost between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, in the sense that, all the right. Let's talk about the younglings, I guess. So you start out as a youngling. So when you're taken from your family, from your home, whatever, to train as a Jedi, you start out as a youngling. So you're very young, because they search for these kids, these babies that are strong in the Force. And we find out that Yoda is in fact the primary mentor to the younglings. He's the one who trains them up until they are eligible to become Padawan learners and become an apprentice to a Jedi Knight or Jedi Master, right? So Obi-Wan obviously went through that process, and is very much, although it's not directly said, but I think he's very much in the camp, in the Yoda camp, in the terms of the more abstract, like, Force, and which is why I think it's so evident in the original trilogy why they talk about it like that, and they don't mention, and you can argue all these things, but I think it's a fascinating story point, in-universe point, you know what I mean, that they don't mention the midi-chlorians and that kind of thing, because quite frankly, Yoda and Obi-Wan weren't really into that aspect of it. And you can argue that, you know what I mean? And it works in story terms that they wouldn't talk about it, and it wouldn't, it's not really necessary, because quite frankly, at that point in the original trilogy, their only hope is Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? Well, Luke and Leia. But I guess that's another story for another time. Were they being sexist? Why would they choose Luke over Leia? Interesting. I don't know. But we can talk about that another time. But anyway, so they're not as concerned with midi-chlorians. They're not as concerned with the living force, that kind of thing. But Qui-Gon is. And like I said, I was always fascinated by that aspect. I was like, ooh, the living force. I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. And I think one of the things that really set Qui-Gon apart, and one of the things that set Anakin apart in a way, because in a similar fashion, in a similar way that Obi-Wan was sort of drawn to Yoda's teachings more than his own master's teachings, I think Anakin was more drawn to Qui-Gon's teachings than Obi-Wan's teachings. And of course he was learning from Palpatine and that kind of thing, which we don't see a lot of in the prequel movies. It's more like off camera, that kind of thing. We do see a little bit of it in Revenge of the Sith, which I think is really cool. Obviously with the story of Darth Plagueis and that kind of thing. And we can tell that Palpatine has been working on Anakin. I mean, he's definitely been working on him and pointing him in this dark direction, which you could argue is not really dark, but maybe a righteous direction. Who knows? I don't know. Sorry, guys. I'm still recovering from this, so I will be periodically clearing my throat probably and coughing. I don't know. I'll try to cut the coughs out. Sorry, but anyway, yeah, so there's this other perspective now, and so, the midichlorians, the midichlorian count, that kind of thing, which I think is a good sort of scientific way. I mean, it kind of introduces the Force sort of mixing harmoniously with science. And it introduces a way for the Jedi to quantify somebody's ability to use the Force. It's not just this feeling. It's not just this abstraction, that like, oh yeah, he can use the Force, so I wonder how powerful he is. Well, let me just oh yeah, there, yeah, yeah, he's pretty powerful. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, great. And then I don't know. I mean, it, I don't know. It just doesn't work that way. And I like the fact that they quantified it. That they added this element. That George Lucas added this element that helps them to understand how powerful somebody is with the Force. You know, and so, like I said, it adds more complexity. It adds a greater depth to the Force, in my opinion, to the nature of the Force, to what we understood the Force was in the original trilogy, and then now what we see. Oh, this is a new element to the Force. So I understand why they did it, and and if you hear George Lucas talk about it in interviews and that kind of thing, it was just that, and it was a way to reintroduce the Force to new viewers and even existing viewers, and to kind of enhance it and to kind of build upon it, and take that as you will. I know there are people who don't like it, and that's fine, and well, there you go, just move on. But there's so much more I could talk about. I wanted to address those 2 points, those 2 perspectives, about the nature of the Force. And again, I like that aspect of the living Force and how Qui-Gon so embodies it, and how he, it's not so much about what's going to happen in the future. It's not so much about foreseeing, these things and having these images and dreams or whatever, which we of course know eventually does affect Anakin later on, especially in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But it's more about what's going on now. What is happening now? What is around you? What is that? And he has this profound sort of respect for life that I like. I don't know. It added this new element and just made it more potent. And then again, going into what Anakin, how he sees the light side of the Force, which, like I said, I don't think we ever really saw in the original trilogy. Was anybody really kind of talking about, wow, how great the light side of the Force is? But we see that in Anakin, especially in Attack of the Clones, when Anakin and Padme are on that freighter, dressed as refugees heading to Naboo. When he talks about, when she says that thing about, oh, are Jedi allowed to love and that kind of thing, and he says yes. It's not a love that is sexual or lustful, or it's not that kind of love, but it's a love that is sort of about compassion and nurture and that kind of thing. And that's what Jedi are meant to be and have, and to love all living things and to treat them with respect, and to be there for them, to protect them. And I don't know, that's a wonderful little scene for me anyway, when he talks about that. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, cool. I mean, that's exactly what the Jedi are supposed to be. And it just adds this whole new dimension, like I said. And again, later on in Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin and Palpatine are talking, and it's again Anakin who is at the forefront of the light side of the Force, when Darth Sidious is like, oh, you can't, the Jedi are evil, and the Jedi are they just want their power, and they want to keep their power, and that kind of thing. And Anakin tells him, the Jedi are selfless. It's the Sith who are after power and want to keep their power, and that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's just it just adds a little bit more dimension to it, a little bit more depth. It also shows that not all Jedi believe one thing. It shows that there are, perhaps divisions, perhaps, different sects, maybe different groups within the Jedi. I mean, we don't know that for sure either, because of the fact that they don't really go into it. And all we really have are the movies now, since the expanded universe is no longer canon or whatever. But I enjoy the expanded universe, and I've read a lot of the books, and I'm still going through a lot of the books right now. but I'm definitely looking forward to the new stuff just to see what they do with it. Of course, I mean, it's Star Wars. But anyway, just something for you guys to ponder on. I don't know. I wanted to talk about it, and I hope you guys found it interesting. But I want to move on a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about Dark Souls 3. We have now seen a gameplay trailer of Dark Souls 3 at Gamescom, and it looks amazing, of course. It's going to be releasing on PS4 and Xbox One, as well as PC. Sometime next year. I'm thinking probably March of 2016, something like that. That seems to be From Software's general release window, but we'll see. Which kind of sucks for me because I'm already looking forward to Uncharted 4, which is also coming out in March of next year. So I'm like, damn it. I got to get both games. I got to save up, man. But yeah, as you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a huge Naughty Dog fan, and I play everything that they come out with, and I mean, let me tell you this: there are 3 studios, 3 developers that I absolutely get pretty much every game they make, and those developers are Naughty Dog, From Software, and Irrational Games. Naughty Dog, of course, is famous for Crash Bandicoot, of which I have all those games. Jak and Daxter on the PS2, of which I have all those games and played all those games. And then, of course, on PS3, the Uncharted series, of which I have all those games as well. And now, of course, on PS4, I'm waiting for Uncharted 4. And then From Software, of course, famous for the Souls series, Demon's Souls, which was fantastic. I haven't played everything from Software. I've never got into the Armored Core series, so I can say that much. But everything that they have done recently, all the way from Demon's Souls up to Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, I have played and loved. And then, of course, Irrational Games, famous for System Shock, and then BioShock. That was the really big one I got into, and BioShock Infinite. All fantastic games. But like I said, those 3 developers, obviously I love other developers, but those 3 are my main stuff. Those, whenever they come up with stuff, I'm there and I get it, and you know, and it's usually always awesome anyway. So, but anyway, Dark Souls 3 looks a lot like Dark Souls 1 and a lot like Bloodborne, honestly, and it makes sense because now Hidetaka Miyazaki is back as director. Dark Souls 2, because he was working on Bloodborne, he was absent from the Dark Souls 2 as a director. I forget what his name is, but there was a different director for Dark Souls 2. And a lot of people were kind of like upset about it or whatever. And I don't know. I love Dark Souls 2. But anyway, Bloodborne, of course, was fantastic. And then now Dark Souls 3, which looks to be, combining a little bit of that Bloodborne gameplay. And I hope a little bit more of the quickness. It looks a little faster to me. I don't know. I know a lot of people are saying it retains that sort of the slowness from the earlier Souls titles, but I'm kind of like, I don't know, it looks pretty fast to me. I mean, the enemies look pretty quick. Shields are back, of course. But I don't know, I'm kind of like, maybe I'll go do a shieldless playthrough, because I just kind of got used to not having a shield with Bloodborne. So we'll see how that goes with Dark Souls 3, but I don't know. I'm kind of like, I may not use a shield this time, just to see. But yeah, it looks great, it looks fantastic. The architecture, all that stuff, the enemies. It looks like backstabs are back in terms of what we saw with Dark Souls 1. And then the parries are back, so they look almost identical to Dark Souls 1. My only issue with that is, I always thought Dark Souls was just too lenient on the parry and just too lenient on the backstab. Like, it was just too easy, and so many people were playing like that. And I think it, again, this is my opinion, so, but I think it kind of lost a little bit of the need to have skill as a player. If all you have to do is circle around a dude and backstab him, or all you have to do is just wait for him. And it was a pretty open window. I mean, it was a pretty big animation window to do that parry, and just do a parry and just keep parrying people. And that's kind of why I lost some interest in the PvP specifically. I love the PvE in Dark Souls, but the PvP I just was automatically turned off by, because as soon as I got in, that's all people were doing. Oh, let's just backstab. Let's just circle around you and backstab you, And it was just like, damn, you don't actually want to fight me. You just want to backstab me. I don't know. It lost some appeal to me. And honestly, I was excited when Dark Souls 2 came out. And they had changed that. It was harder to do backstabs. It was harder to parry. You had a very small window to parry properly. And I know a lot of people who really liked the Dark Souls 1 system were kind of disappointed by Dark Souls 2. But I actually was like, yes, this is what I wanted, because now it's more skill-based. Now it's more like, okay, you're not just going to circle around somebody and try and do a backstab, or you're not just going to parry them, with this huge animation window. Like, there was a much smaller window, so it was much harder to do those things, and you needed more skill. So I liked that. And then, of course, with Bloodborne, again, you have the more skill-oriented backstabs, and also the more skill-oriented parries, which I liked. So I'm hoping, even though Miyazaki is directing Dark Souls 3, and it looks like the backstabs and the parries are similar to Dark Souls 1, I'm hoping that they add that sort of skill-based system in there, make it a little bit harder, make it a little bit, and I hope there's a way to, that's the other thing, like I hope they do, like especially in PvP, there's a way to kind of roll out of a backstab if you get into that position, because I think just getting stuck in that animation is like, I don't know. There's got to be some kind of way for people to be more skilled about it instead of just kind of circling somebody and backstabbing them. I think it's cheap and doesn't work for me. So, but other than that, I mean, it looks great. It looks very quick, looks very dark. I like the use of the torch. Obviously the fantasy setting. There's some stuff I think they are kind of channeling Bloodborne with some of the architecture. Looks a little like Yarnum to me, but there are other areas that look really cool and fantastical, and like, so it's gonna be huge. I think it's gonna be that, and Uncharted 4 are gonna be what I'm gonna be spending most of my time with early next year. But yeah, it just looks great, and I just can't wait. I mean, that's gonna be fantastic, and I think to finally see, I know it's not really a story in the traditional sense, but you can see in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, there are some similarities and some continuations of lore and things like that. So I'm hoping in Dark Souls 3, I heard there's going to be more cutscenes, more story scenes, a little bit more lore and content oriented stuff. So I'm hoping that there is really kind of a conclusion, something that we can kind of like, yes, this is the end of Dark Souls, and that kind of thing, and maybe even talk about some origin stuff as well, because there's actually a sequence in there which is pretty fascinating where you see the hero character thrusting a hot poker into a corpse, and it turning into the bones and the fire, and so it looks like there's a creation of like the bonfire and that kind of thing, which will be interesting to see, like if we actually get to do that. I mean, if there's a point where we are creating the flame again, if we are creating the first flame again, that would be fascinating, because they talk about that in Dark Souls 2 a lot, like especially like the Lost Sinner and that kind of thing, trying to reignite the first flame. So it's like, oh well, what about in Dark Souls 3? Are we actually going to be able to do that? God, that would be fascinating if we did that. But anyway, yeah, so there's Dark Souls 3, and I'm kind of going long on time. I want these to kind of be half an hour, so maybe I'll just talk about the China stuff next time or whatever. I don't know how interested you guys are about that. What I do find fascinating about it is how it seems the global market is dependent on China. It's interesting how powerful China has become now, and maybe they did this on purpose. I don't know. But based on what I've read, like I said, I'm no expert on economics. But based on what I've read, it looks like China has been fudging the numbers, as it were, which is obviously a big no-no, and saying that they've ended up with these huge increases, these 7% increases in GDP year over year, which turns out, oh, nope, that was not happening. And now, they're paying the price for that, obviously, and their currency, the yuan, I believe. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's yuan, yuan, or yuan, I don't know. But their currency has been devalued and that kind of thing. And so that, when China came out and said, oh, we're devaluing our currency, is sort of when everyone was like, wait, what? And you see this huge wave ripple across the globe, everyone panicking and everyone, oh no, the stock markets are crashing and they're going down. And it's just fascinating for me to kind of watch that. I am, like I said, in no way a finance or economic expert. But I do kind of watch that stuff just out of kind of curiosity. And it's just funny to me how there are so many people into that and so many people kind of like just kind of I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of slaves to it. I don't know. Which it's their job. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, sure, care about it, whatever. It's just interesting to me how much effect that has, like in China having such a huge global effect on everyone's economy is pretty fascinating to me. And I don't know if I should be more worried than I am. I just kind of think it's kind of enlightening and also kind of humbling in the same way. Answer me this though, whoever can, with all this happening, this market crashing and all that kind of stuff. Gas and oil, right? Oil per barrel is going way down. I guess it's the lowest it's been since 2012, I think. And I think it's like $40 a barrel or something like that. But when those prices go down, why doesn't our gas prices go down? It seems like gas prices are going up all the time, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But I mean, I guess, it kind of makes sense to me because of the fact that, okay, well, now we have to make more money, so let's jack up the prices. But it's kind of like, what? Come on, your prices are going down. Our prices should go down. Jeez, isn't that how economics works? I don't know. But anyway, just a brief talk on that. I don't know. I thought it was something fascinating, and I'm kind of following it. Not really, but it's just kind of like interesting to me, like how China, in a very indirect and very weird way, has become sort of very powerful in terms of, hey, we can affect the global economy by doing this. But of course, I say that maybe they planned it because it's evil China's plan to do this to freak everybody out and crash everybody's market. But I don't think so. I think it was just them being a little bit too optimistic, and of course fudging the numbers and that kind of thing, and which is something you do not want to do in economics. I know that much. I learned that in economics 101 when I was in college. So. I know that much. Do not fudge the numbers in economics. That is no, bad stuff. But anyway, thanks guys for listening to another episode here of Anthony's Asylum. We release every Friday, or I release every Friday. I don't know why I said we. The royal we releases every Friday. And I'm on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, and I do have a Patreon page. So please check those out. And I will see you guys next week. All right. I am your host, Anthony, signing out.